Hello, welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCGames.com Modern Open in Charlotte, part of the SCG Tour, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller alongside Lands aficionado Daryl Ayers. How you doing?
I'm doing well for so far.
Now you're playing a deck that had a long life in Modern, and then Summer Bloom got banned.
Yeah.
And now you're back at it. This is the Amulet Titan deck.
Yep.
Amulet of Vigor is the core here. We saw a resurgence of this deck briefly when people started going to Sakura Tribe Scout.
Yep.
And the deck kind of fell off again. It has its supporters. There's 3 or 4 players out there that have played the deck. And you're back on it. You've been working with Matthias, kind of figuring out the correct build of this deck.
I've been mostly talking to him and Edgar.
Mm-hmm.
He always plays this deck.
Magalis, right?
Yeah. I was just losing with everything in Modern. I was getting frustrated. And then I was like, you know what, screw it. I'll just try the deck because he always wins with it. And then I played it for like a week, did pretty well, and then I top 8'd a Moto PTQ with it, and I've been winning a lot in leagues and stuff like that. So it's had good results. It feels like it does nothing a lot, but then I just keep winning, so I don't know what to say.
And you had been playing other big mana strategies like Valakut or Scapeshift decks.
Yeah, I think the red-green Scapeshift deck is really good. I think I hate playing it, and it's miserable. You just play the most expensive card in your hand every turn you can, and then after 4 or 5 turns, you see if you win. Okay. I wasn't having enough fun.
So you're looking for a little challenge here.
Yeah,
this deck definitely presents that.
Yep.
The people who play this deck are dedicated to it, and there's just endless amounts of puzzles and trying to figure out the right lines. And it seems right up your alley for someone who plays lands a lot in Legacy as well.
Yeah, I always play lands in Legacy, so I have to play the land decks in Modern, just be the weird land guy all the time. I don't know. I do well enough, so I don't complain. All
right, so what is this deck trying to do? Because people who might not know Modern or might not know this deck that well are going to look at this deck list and just be like, I don't know what's happening.
There are basically 3 game plans. Game plan 1 is to draw 2 amulets and kill them on turn 2.
Okay.
Game plan 2 is to draw 1 amulet and play Titan on turn 3. And then the third game plan is to play Titan on turn 3 to 4 without an amulet, and then just kind of grind them out with 6/6s.
Okay, so it's another Primeval Titan deck at its core, but you get to do some pretty obscure things when you have Amulet in play.
Yes.
So we have all the Karoo lands, or the relevant Karoo lands from Ravnica.
Yep.
And then you get to combine them with all kinds of search effects and ramp effects. Take us through a line of play for this deck. Because it's not as simple as just killing them on the second turn. That doesn't happen that much.
The lines can get pretty complicated. Earlier today, when I was on camera, game 1, I played against a blue-eye control player, and it looked like I was just showboating and attacking him with 3 Titans that were getting double strike after I had Pact of Negation. He only had 2 or 3 mana up, like, what am I doing? Just go ahead and kill him. But it's even in those situations, it was hard because I need to play around how he could have multiple Path to Exiles and I can't kill him. And if he untaps in Supreme Verdicts, then I'm kind of far behind. So there was an interesting line where I had multiple Titans in my hand, so I didn't have to be transmuting for them. So I could use one of my transmutes to get the Pact to beat one of the Path to Exiles, and then I could play the other Titan and then pick up my Sunhome, or rather my Slayer Stronghold, even though I had 2 amulets. And then I could replay it to give him a 3rd Titan haste, which is harder a lot of times. Earlier, in a round earlier, I transmuted for explosives and played it on turn 3 just to beat a Blood Moon, so he couldn't lock me out of the game. It's a lot of times it's stuff like that. It's trying to figure out what's going to happen in a turn or 2 and sequencing your lands so you can be ready for that when it happens.
Right. And that's something that separates the average to the good player out of this deck, is most people can usually see this is how I get 1 Titan out very early. But then it's playing around the other spells, how to get more Titans, how to get more damage, or how to kill them in 1 attack type thing. Yeah,
it's hard to come up with a situation on the spot where it was a really intricate line because there's so many moving pieces. The hard problems that come when you're trying to lethal them or attack or play multiple Titans or give 1 haste, when you've drawn your Slayer Stronghold, your Vesuva, your Boros Garrison, and maybe you can't double strike in combat because you've drawn your Selesnya Sanctuary, so you don't have the access to white if you already have the Boros Garrison too. It's really complicated, and you just have to learn how to best cope with the hands you're given a lot of times.
Right. So we'll go through one thing here because this is kind of the base. You get your Primeval Titan out early, and ideally you have the Amulet of Vigor in play. So you immediately search up the haste land, which is Slayer Stronghold, and the Boros Garrison.
Yep.
those come into play. Untap, you get to give it haste, then it gets to attack again, then you can do something crazy like Vesuva and Sunhome, which gives it the double strike.
If you
Back
have
in the day, that was the like crazy one-shot 'em thing.
That's how the turn 2 kills or turn 3 kills come up, is when you have the when you have double Amulet, because the Sunhome takes 4 mana to activate, so you can't do it like the Slayer Stronghold. A lot of times you'll attack with your Titan, and then if I'm worried about a Liliana, I might get a Colony Garden so they can't edict me, or I'll just get some Talaria Wests. If I have extra bounce lands on my hand, you can just get multiple Talaria Wests, and then you've got Titans chained up for the next couple turns when you start transmuting for Summoners packs. Against stuff like Burn, you get Radiant Fountain and a bounce land, pick it up, play it again, and then you just gain 4 or so life a turn, and they die, and they die fairly quickly.
Right. The Colony Garden and the Radiant Fountain are long-time staples of this deck, along with the Cavern of Souls, which allows you to force the Titans into play. But your deck has a bunch of other things going on, too. You've got the Bajuka Bog main deck, and a new addition to the deck is a Walking Ballista, which allows you to just machine gun someone out of the game, and you can tutor it up with Talaria West, and even get to play it uncountered. With Cavern when you have all these moving pieces.
Well, when you play against the control decks, Bog and Ballista are surprisingly some of the most important cards, because if you go for the haste, you usually just can't attack them. They'll just get a Path to Exile, and then you've wasted your Titan, and you couldn't find a Talaria West. So you prioritize the Talaria West for extra Titans, and then after that, after they've used a few removal spells like a Supreme Verdict or Cryptic, Path to Exile, that kind of stuff, one of your Titan triggers, you want to get a Bog to dead their Snapcasters, because when you have 4 Titans, you can just grind them out eventually, especially if you're making it so they don't have enough removal spells in their hand to kill your Titans by exiling them. And then a lot of times they can keep from dying. They'll go to, say, 8 life or so, and it's really hard to get those last few points because they've played all the draw spells. But eventually, you can just find your Ballista via Talaria West or just drawing it over the course of a game. Play a bounce land, pick up a Cavern, replay Cavern, name Construct, play Ballista for 15 or something, and kill him out. Like I did that multiple times today already.
Right, that seems like a very important part of this deck.
Yeah.
Because the old builds would have struggles with that kind of thing, and then they see a lot of creatures in the sideboard that they move to try to help out. But having the tutorable Ballista seems very powerful.
Yeah, the old builds actually, they had the Hivemind combo, which isn't really feasible anymore because you don't have the Summer Bloom to get there on turn 2 or 3 every time. And because that's the case, then you really need something else to close it out, that's where Ballista and then sideboarded creatures come in to shore that up.
Other things you can tutor for, Pact of Negation already mentioned, but Engineered Explosives is just a good answer to a lot of things that are going on in the format.
It's a catch-all. Like I've killed Detention Spheres, Blood Moons. I've already said that. I've killed multiple Wild Nakados. You name it, I can kill it with this. You have all 5 colors, so if you need to take care of some Reality Smashers, you can.
That is wild. Lastly, no more Summer Bloom, but we do have Explore and Azusa still in the main deck. These cards can accelerate you out when you're playing your bounce lands and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, Explore is definitely the worst one. I have 4 Zusa, 4 Sakura Tribe Scout, but Explore is a great game 1 card because you don't know what you're going to need after sideboard to make your deck more diversified. And Explore is kind of medium every time, but it always does what you need it, pretty much. And then when you move to the sideboard, that's where you really start changing the core of the deck.
Right, that's when we have more options here. Starting off, you have more creatures you can search for. So you have Double Tracker, a Hornet Queen, Thragtusk, and then the new one here, Rorek Thar. This was this card was around when this deck was good, but they often went for like multiple Hornet Queens or something like that. So they could just grind out their opponents. Rorek Thar, I assume Storm.
It's mostly for Storm. It's also good against any kind of controlling deck because a lot of times it's just it's just an extra threat in your deck, and you play it and they have to kill it, or the 6/6 will kill them. And if they do, they already just take a 6 spot, and a lot of times they can't do that more than once.
Okay. Trackers give you a little grind in the longer matchups.
Trackers really help against stuff like black-green decks, where they might take your early stuff via discard, or your late game stuff, and it really bridges the gap. It's good early because you can play it on turn 3 after, say, playing an Explore and then play a land, and they have to kill it still, and then you get to draw a card against a Liliana deck. Or in the late game, you could play it, have an Azusa, play a bounce land 2 times, and then just kind of combo off that way.
Yeah, just go off at that point. All right, then you have your removal package here. You got 3 Dismembers, 2 Pyroclasm. Are these for, obviously Pyroclasm's for the lower end or wide decks. Dismember, what is your main target here?
It's mainly for things like Storm, the creature combo decks. So pretty much any combo deck that relies around creatures. You think a Collected Company deck, killing a Knight of the Reliquary can matter because they could Ghost Core to you, killing a Goblin Electromancer or Baral, killing Devoted Druid. And then Pyroclasm shorts that up too, but it's also good against stuff like Empty the Warrens or Affinity if they play 3 or 4 guys on turn 1 or 2, and you can kind of sweep it up and buy the time you need to Hornet Queen them or whatever is necessary.
Sure. And you have 2 Swan Song, 2 Relic of Progenitus, and another Cavern in the matchups where that matters. Swan Song used to be in the deck as well back in the day, mainly countering Blood Moon.
Yeah,
Is Blood Moon still as big of a deal as it was back then?
No, not as much anymore because there's no Blue-Red Twin. Swan Song used to really shine against Blue-Red Twin because you could counter a Remand, a Blood Moon, or a Splinter Twin, but now it's mostly for Blood Moon, but there's also decks like Storm that are spell-based combos where this shines, or Ad Nauseam, or Red-Green Land Destruction, which I played earlier. Just countering a Stone Rain can really get you there sometimes. You just need another turn, and then that'll buy you the turn that you need. And then it's the same thing for Relic. It's good against the fair decks who play Snapcaster Goyf. It's also good against decks like Storm too, because that's kind of a tough matchup. Or decks obviously like Dredge, it's just great.
Where do you see this deck in Modern, right now and going forward? Because when this deck was around earlier, this was like the degenerate broken combo deck.
Yeah.
It is no longer seems to appear like that, but is more as a deck that can, go longer with a person.
It feels like a grindy mid-range deck that can also kind of have a nut draw in sense. I think it's a better Primeval Titan deck than the Red-Green Valakut deck because even though I wasn't enjoying the deck, if I thought this deck was worse, I would play that instead.
Sure.
Because I can kill my opponents on turn 2 and 3, and even if they don't die, a lot of times the game's unwinnable. I have Titan packed counter spell in hand, and they're just locked out. But against the fair decks, you can just grind them out, and they can't do anything. That being said, I think if you put the time and mastery into this deck, it can be better than Red-Green Scapeshift. The floor is a lot lower, but the ceiling's also higher here.
Sure.
That being said, if this deck becomes popular, I don't think it's something that will be extremely good because it's fairly easy to hate out with Blood Moon. You don't have as many crazy draws with Summer Bloom, so you're more on the fair plan or just Titan chaining to win the game.
All right. Is there anything when you guys were testing that didn't make the cut or you want to try out still?
Things I want to try out, I want to try playing more Tireless Trackers or more Thragtusks. Instead of having a split, maybe just go hard on one because whichever one kind of comes better. I've tried black versions of this deck with Abrupt Decay in the sideboard and things like Memoricide or Cranial Extraction to help the combo matchups. I've considered playing blue to play Serum Visions, but I'm not really sure you need that because I think the other colors can offer more for right now. And stuff like Explore is kind of like a Serum Visions. And with the Sakura Tribe Scout in the deck, Ancient Stirrings and Amulet, your one drop spot is kind of taken up a lot of times. But this deck definitely isn't defined so much as the deck list itself. It's got a lot of work to go, but I feel good where it is now.
All right.
But I think it could be better.
Well, Daryl, thanks for joining me here in the sideboard. This deck's always interesting to watch. There's a lot of moving parts, and anyone who enjoys this style of gameplay, this deck just leads you to many fun games and just mental tests.
It's definitely the most fun I've had playing Magic in a long time.
All right. Appreciate you joining me here in the sideboard. People at home, stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all week long for the action here in Charlotte.